Hi, I'm Barrie Rose, and in this podcast, I talk to content creators and advocates in the progressive space, ultimately making the world a better place. Today, I talked to Katey for Change about using your voice and platforms for positive change in the world. Enjoy. Hi, Katey for Change.
Hey, how are you, Barrie?
I'm great. It's a really nice day. The sun is shining. How are you?
I'm doing well. I just went out and voted today in our local elections here in Fort Worth, and so very excited.
Oh, what are the elections for?
It was city council, school board, and water board. So,
Wow.
yeah, I got to vote in all three. So that was really fun. Did my research, went in prepared.
Yes, that's a great reminder for people to vote not just in the major elections, but
Right.
school board stuff actually does matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of in the state and local levels where we see extremism rooted in and rooted out. And so, like, these down ballot races, they don't get the same attention, but they are so important into building up and creating change.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking about that this last year that our local stuff is what is affecting our community right where we are.
Right.
So that actually seems to have the most impact on our daily lives.
Exactly. I 100% agree. I think my favorite example is like in Texas, we don't have many sidewalks. One, which is its own problem, but two, we have to drive everywhere and everyone gets annoyed with a pothole. And who fixes that? That's your state and local elected officials. And so working with them and electing people who will invest in infrastructure. It's like the simple inconveniences that are addressed at the state and local level.
Yes. I see that every day on my runs. These sidewalks are so messed up and people could easily trip. They're all like discombobulated. It's kind of crazy. I should talk to my local city council.
Yes, I can't walk a block to a restaurant without not having sidewalk. Like the sidewalk only goes halfway there. And so I can't even walk to a local restaurant that's a block away from me with sidewalk here in Texas. It's really sad.
Oh my. Okay, so I feel like we started off, but we didn't even intro you. So I think we should just take a moment and say, I see you as this really an intelligent person, and you're using your platforms to use your voice to assert and go after and advocate for the progress you want to see in the world. How do you describe what you do?
Yeah, I think what I try to do is I try to make politics accessible. I think one huge barrier to entry that people have with politics is knowing how it works and knowing what is going on. And so some elected officials, namely Trump, would love to say one thing and it sounds great, but he's actually taking actions that do the exact opposite. So he says he supports workers, but every action he's taken has done the exact opposite. And so how can I break down the headlines and break down the latest legislation and explain to people what is actually going on? And so I really try to use my platform to educate and inform people. And yes, it's about causes I care about for sure, but I think at the end of the day, it's doing what is right and doing what's right for our neighbors and for our families and for the people we care about.
Yes, what is right? And that can mean so many different things.
I think a lot of my political beliefs really aren't left or right. It's being a good neighbor. You know, making sure my neighbor can love who they want to love, making sure my neighbor can put food on their table, making sure that the next door neighbor that has a kid can afford healthcare. It's really not that hard and it's not that complicated. It's just taking care of people.
Yeah, I mean, once you simplify it in those terms, it seems so much more accessible and not some broad concept like politics. It's so complicated. It's actually our everyday access and what we're able to do and how we're able to support our lives.
Right. It's growing up in Texas, it's all about Southern hospitality. It's all about caring for people. And so at the end of the day, being raised here, I just want to be a good neighbor. And for me, that's advocating for policies and making sure that policies at all levels, state, local, state, and national, help my neighbors. It's really, politics is this big, scary world. And I think like your content as well It's making these complex issues broken down into something that's really simple. And you do it through edutainment. I do it through discussing behind the scenes of the headlines. And we both, I think, have the same goal of just helping people and informing people.
Yes, definitely. So you did mention that you grew up in Texas and you're there now, right?
Yes.
How did your environment shape how you're viewing what you do? Because you're not in the most liberal space.
Absolutely not.
So how did you come out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've mostly lived in the South up until I did about around a year in Philadelphia. So that was my first exposure to really living in a purple state, I guess. It was a swing state, but it had a blue governor. So that was my first experience. But growing up in the South, I think I mentioned the values of like taking care of our neighbor, but it's also like being like Southern hospitality is so rooted in everything. I think whenever anyone comes to Texas or comes to the South, we're so friendly. And I think that growing up with that changed my beliefs of like this wasn't a left or right issue, is it helping my neighbor or not? And so I think growing up with Southern hospitality at every turn, it really shaped that. But I loved growing up and having access to, I grew up in a small town. So I moved to Fort Worth middle school, but I grew up in a really small town. And there were people that, especially now after I've become more outspoken, disagree with me. And I think that has made me a stronger person because I can hear their side. I think sometimes in politics especially, we think the goal of every political conversation is to change a mind. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Simply understanding where someone's coming from, what issues are impacting them, can help you make one, I think it helps bridge by being able to have those conversations, but two, it gives you an opportunity to have a stronger argument because you know what the concerns are of a certain policy, what the concerns are facing people. I think one example I can think of off the top of my head is I'm actually reading a book about it. It's actually back to Pennsylvania. It's about fracking in Pennsylvania. And it talks about how fracking is an essential industry in these small towns in Western PA and how their entire economy is evolved around it. And so if we were to shut it down immediately, we would crush this downtown. And so I think we would crush this local economy. So we have to take those concerns like seriously and how we address it. So while we do care about our climate, how can we address it so we don't kill this community's economy and people's jobs, at the end of the day. And so by having that empathy and having those difficult conversations, more so now than when I was growing up, it's really challenged me to consider different ways to talk about policies.
Yeah, that brings up such a good point about the fracking. Like if you think about oil drilling and fracking and think about just how it impacts the earth, that's one side of it. But then it is also, like you make such a good point in that it's giving people jobs and fueling their economy. These things are so nuanced and one thing affects so many other things that when we make these sweeping statements or we like take something away, it's affecting this whole ecosystem that we have. I just loved what you said about empathy.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it's anytime there are both sides to every policy, and I think that there are ways to work policies that minimizes impact and helps the most people, and there will always be a trade-off, but there are ways to minimize the impacts of trade-offs, particularly in the climate space. And so how do we, I think that's the question, is by listening you can hear these different things, and maybe approaching climate from bolstering local rural economies is a way to, start doing that. Because I think if you talk to any American, I would hope that they would not want to hurt the earth or hurt the planet. I think that's like no one wants, another example is no one wants a kid to die from gun violence. I think that there are fundamental agreements amongst people. It's just recognizing the policies to get there is where the disconnect is.
How did you get into all this advocacy and learning about the policy, were you always interested from an early age?
Yes and no. I think I went into college wanting to study public policy, but it wasn't really until my sophomore year of high school where I was exposed to US government. You know, we all had that one government class, and that really shifted my perspective. I kind of learned for the first time that the values and the issues I cared about were actually considered liberal. I didn't really know that. Now I would say I'm a hardcore liberal, but it wasn't until that sophomore class that I was really exposed to the concept of politics, that the things that I believed in and cared about were political. And from then on, I really started speaking up slowly. But in college, I did major in public policy and anthropology, but I took a little detour and worked for the football team of an SEC school. And I was an equipment manager on the team. And looking back, I think it really did prepare me for my career working with, in a male-dominated space and communicating. But I was going to go into sports, but then the Covenant Elementary School shooting happened in Nashville, Tennessee. And that was kind of what flipped my calling of, I put going into the sports industry on hold and decided to go show up to the state legislature and protest. We witnessed the expulsions of the two youngest Black lawmakers in the Tennessee State House, Justin Jones and Justin Pearson. They were expelled for simply protesting on the House floor. It was truly an unprecedented attack on our democracy. And from then on, it was kind of an evolution of, I'm going to go present all of this data to these lawmakers and hope, that, with the facts that they will do something different. And when they didn't, that's kind of what shifted me into electoral politics of, if they're not going to listen to facts and listen to their constituents, the state of Tennessee, over 60% of people supported common sense gun reform measures like red flag laws. Well, if they're not going to be held accountable to the people, let's vote in someone who is. And so that's kind of what evolved me into working into, campaigns, interning, full-time work. It really comes from electing, my desire to elect good people to office that will be held accountable to the people, because that was absolutely not the case in Tennessee.
Wow. So it seems to be that you noticed something that was unjust and you used your voice to do something about it, like something proactive.
Yes, absolutely.
And I feel like so many people want justice to be served, but not everyone will just do something. How do you get that kind of confidence?
Looking back, I think the football team really shaped me into who I am today. And who would have thought doing grown men's laundry would have done that? But it really gave me the confidence to speak up. I worked on opposing team sidelines, so every game I was on the opposing team for my first year, working with the refs and holding the Vanderbilt footballs. So I was in enemy territory, and we were getting made fun of. We weren't the best when I was there. So the opposing players would, make jabs at me one way or another. And so I had to develop a thick skin. I mean, I was even booed by an entire section at the University of Florida.
Why?
I had to go get the ball. One of our players, the ball went into the stands and I had to get it. And so when I got it, the entire section booed me. But It happens. But it really developed a thick skin, but a confidence in my voice, because if I didn't speak up about something going on at practice, someone could get injured. And so politics is the same way, but longer term. The consequences of me not speaking up in the moment on a football field could be the difference between a torn ACL or not. Versus longer term, it's the same consequences in politics, just not in that immediate moment, but maybe longer term, that's someone's job, that's someone's access to healthcare, that's someone's meal. And so that confidence that I really got from working for football and honing my communication skills and developing a thick skin really translated into working in politics. And, I think people can take action and fight for justice in different ways. It doesn't have to be speaking up, leading a protest like me, but calling your lawmakers, making sure that you're voting in these state and local elections. All of those things matter and are different ways of seeking justice as well.
So you were working with a football team, which I can imagine is a really, like, football players are kind of like alpha males, if you just think about it. I mean, they have a lot of testosterone. They have a lot of stuff and a lot of energy. So, and you're like a small, like, nice girl. Like, I can imagine that you have to be sort of tough to be in that environment. That's so interesting that using your voice would be the difference between a torn ACL or an injury. That's crazy. But I understand how putting yourself in those sort of environments can polish yourself to enable you to take that sort of mentality and apply it to a different thing. I think about it in myself, like in my Buddhist practice, I was working in the Buddhist centers, like in LA. I did it when I lived in New York as well. And they tell you, like, people aren't allowed to bring in drinks to these big meetings, or they're not allowed to, like, film the meetings and things like this. But there's always a reason behind it. Like, I could think that there's always a reason with certain rules in the football realm. But, like, if you bring in a drink to a big meeting and you spill your coffee all over the place, it's going to create a stain in the ground. So there's rules, but people like me that were working there, not getting paid, it was a kind of a volunteer situation. I'd have to use my voice to tell people no and go up to them and say, excuse me, you can't do that, or excuse me, you can't save seats. And even though it seems small, just having that training to use your voice and be really direct when something needs to be said or done, I could apply those skills to different parts in my life. Like, when I need something, I'm not scared to ask for it now, or I'm not scared of confrontation. Like, if someone gives me the wrong thing at a restaurant, it's not the thing I ordered, I'm not scared to say, excuse me, can I have this other thing? I've done it at coffee shops and I said it in a really nice way, and they always fix it. But I feel like training, like you had, is incredibly helpful for other areas in your life. And it ultimately led you to where you are now, which is awesome. It's crazy how life works.
Yeah, I never thought when I was working for the football team, one, I walked in a completely different person than I left. I was not confident in myself. I was not confident in my voice, and really working for the football team, I left a different person. And I'm incredibly grateful for the program, and the players, the staff really showed me different leadership. And so I'm incredibly grateful for them and will always hold Vanderbilt football in my heart. But I think it's exactly what you said. There are so many different things in life that you don't expect, like working at a Buddhist center, that changes and gives you more confidence in yourself, and that those skills apply to many different facets of your life. And so, saying yes and taking on a different adventure, not exactly knowing where it leads, is always a worthwhile endeavor, in my opinion.
Yes, saying yes. What would you say to someone who wants to gain that confidence and use their voice for good, but doesn't know how to do that?
I think it's just starting. It's something that, and as a content creator, I think there's always a risk. Is this video going to flop? Is it going to do well? Right? But at the end of the day, it's just practicing, and you get more confident in it. And you also recognize that there are, different avenues for change. I might be a loud voice online, but there's someone that is dropping off one-pagers in members' elected officials' offices. That's also important. There are people that are doing book clubs. That's important. Like, it's just organizing takes on many different forms. It can be online, it can be in person, it can be leading a protest, but it can also just be organizing your neighborhood or your corner of the world by hosting a Democratic dinner or a book club. There are like small things that aren't as scary that really do move the needle. When you think about what Republicans are doing, they are organizing year round. I still see, it's not an election year, Trump is not on the ballot, but I still see, those annoying red hats why aren't we, organizing our neighborhood of the world year round is important. And so those dinners, those book clubs, they do matter. And so if you have the capacity to invite 4 friends over and chat about what's going on in the world, that really makes a difference.
Yes, I saw your piece of content about the 3 things you can do in democratic dinners. And then I thought, what is a democratic dinner? Because obviously, is it just people talking about democratic democracy, things that are going on?
I think something that I learned in Tennessee, I would do with Young Dems. I started a midnight breakfast. And so I don't know if I'm capable of, doing midnight breakfast still, 1 year post-grad. I'm a grandma now. I love my 9 p.m. bedtimes. But I found that the camaraderie that was formed, we had elected officials show up, we had candidates show up, we had other organizers, and being able to talk with one another. Like, yes, we talked about politics, but we also talked about other things. It helped us knew what each other's strengths were in movement building, which is important. We knew who we could call for digital, which would be me, or I knew who I could call for help with a protest guide and protest plan. We had groups, we got to know each other's skills. But I think developing that sense of community is essential, because it's also in that space where new ideas and crazy ideas can emerge just from a random side conversation. And I think that creating those spaces and bringing people into the fold, especially in the South, when it feels so isolating to be a Democrat, showing other people that they're not alone is really, really important. And so building that community, doing a Democratic tailgate in the fall for football games, there are ways that we can just build community and show other blue dots in red states that they're not alone.
Yeah, I like that about having people use their inherent strengths to add to the collective. I think that's a great thing to remember, that not everyone is the same and we all have something different that we could contribute.
Absolutely. For example, as much as I do love to door knock, but I am a much better phone banker. I'm trying to run. I've talked to Barrie about this. I'm trying to run and become a runner, but sometimes my body, after doing 15 years of dance, really says no to running. And it's the same with walking long distances. So I am not a good door knocker. I will do it, but I am not good at it. I'm very slow. I won't hit as many doors as other people, and it's much more effective for the campaign or for me to just be on the phone calling people, leaving voicemails. And I think that that's like knowing each other's strengths. Maybe that field director, had they not chatted with me at dinner about how I'm trying to run, but it hurts, and I'm a slow walker after 15 years of wear and tear from ballet, that I might not be a good door knocker, but I can be a great phone banker. And so just knowing each other's strengths from one-off stories, it makes a big difference in effectiveness of a campaign as well.
Yeah. How's your injury with, are you healing up? Are you going to be able to run again soon?
We'll see. We're going to try. I'm icing. I'm getting back into it. I'm doing everything I can. Barrie and Lorenzo helped me try to run a 5K, and I'm still trying.
I mean, you're going to do it, right?
I am going to do it.
You're just on a short break.
We are just in a lot of pain right now. So I'm trying to, I take ibuprofen, icing, doing everything I can, cross training, but we're on a little running hiatus at the moment.
Yeah, you'll definitely get back there. I hope you get back there after your short,
yes,
break.
Hopefully.
Yeah, because you still have some months till that 5K.
Yes, my goal is to do a turkey trot. So we have time. We have plenty of time. So we'll get there. But my dancer joints just don't love running.
Do you ever dance anymore?
I do. I think that using that side of my brain is really, really important for my mental health, the creative side. So, dancing, coloring, creativity is really important. So I do try to dance. Is it the same? No, because I'm not in like a competition team. I'm not at a studio. But I do try to go into my gym and dance, I try to do it when there's not many people around because, you know, why is a girl dancing in an apartment gym? But it truly brings me so much joy. And after, I've been doing it since I was 3 years old. So I don't know or remember a world without dance. And so it is really critical to who I am. And again, I think it speaks to that confidence of being able to go on a stage and perform in front of people. And maybe a style or a routine that I don't feel the most comfortable in. It really challenged me, and it made me okay being on stage in front of audiences. But yes, I love it and miss it.
Yeah, I just saw this contemporary dance performance or they were just practicing in the park right next to our house, and I ran up to them and I said, "Who are you people? I want to join." And I got the name of the place.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I took a bunch of dance classes growing up, but I could never really do the routines or stick to the routines. I always wanted to just free form. So I had trouble learning the routines. But I do really love to dance. I've been meaning to do this ecstatic dance. Have you ever heard of it?
I've not.
Okay, I've yet to go, but apparently it's just all out ecstatic, like that word sounds.
I love that.
Kind of just cathartic, like free movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite was doing improv. It's like they would play a random song and you would have to do it, or they would give, like, we have improv games, so it would be like move like honey, and so all of your moves would be slow and fluid.
Ooh, move like honey.
Yes, or there might be like move like popcorn, and so that would be a different style. And so, you know, exactly. And so like adjusting and embracing that challenge and doing things that are out of your comfort zone. Because I was classically trained, doing contemporary was really hard for me for a very long time. And so that like class always challenged me to push myself and to try new things. And so I highly recommend, if anyone can, to go take an improv dance class, because you just grow and learn so much about yourself, and like you grow into trying new things that are uncomfortable.
I will take that challenge.
Yes, you'll have to let me know how it goes. I'm excited to hear about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just seemed like maybe it was your dancer background that kind of gives you this discipline. Like, I feel this determination and discipline with you, which is a really amazing skill. Like, I know you're going to be so successful just based on those things. How do you stay, like, how do you recharge? I know you did mention you get 9 hours of sleep.
Yes, I do try to get all 8 hours. I think that's really, really crucial. 8 to 9, ideally 9. But I think that's really crucial to me being able to function. The next day, I tried to pull an all-nighter recently, or I did pull an all-nighter, and it was not a lovely sight. Let's just say that.
Was it for work?
Yeah, it was for work, and I don't ever want to do that again. I will if it's asked of me, but it was really hard to function the next day, and it took me several days to recover. So I really do prioritize sleep. I think that's really important. I also intentionally try to carve out time away from politics. So I try to create time away, whether that's playing on my Nintendo Switch, I play Animal Crossing and Fortnite, or watching a Netflix show, or running. I try to create that intentional space and time away, because I cannot put my best foot forward in my 9 to 5 or on Katey for Change if I'm burnt out. And someone once told me, and it's always hard to remember this, I think, as someone who so desperately wants to help people, that, a movement is not good if you step back and it crumbles. That is not the mark of a good movement. And so as much as I want to contribute, I have to recognize at times that, the movement will continue on if it's a good movement, if it's built right, which I think the fight for our democracy in this moment is. And so it's okay to take a step back so that I can contribute more in the long run. And so like this weekend, I batched my content, which I don't ever do. I always try to film, relevant to the news cycle. So I filmed it ahead of time, did a little blue dot in a red state series, and went on vacation. And the only thing I did, Katey for Change wise, was post those videos every morning. And that was such a nice needed break, because now I feel rejuvenated, and like then I can go the next 6 months and keep fighting. Because Donald Trump's strategy is literally called shock and awe. He's trying to overwhelm our systems with bad news after bad news after bad news. And he wants us to tune out or give up and just accept it. And so I think that the biggest resistance we can have right now is taking care of ourselves so that we can be in the fight for the long run. He's hoping that all of us creators, all of us activists are burnt out and will go silent, but he is deeply mistaken, because we're going to recharge, we're going to prioritize ourselves, and we are going to be in this fight for the next 4 years.
Or however long it takes.
I say 4, but
yeah, 4.
Let's be optimistic.
Or less.
Yeah, 4 or less. So let's be optimistic. But I think, we're already building towards important elections now in 2025. I think the numbers, 100,000 at least. There's 100,000 seats up for grabs in 2025 across the nation. So really important state and local elections. But we're also building towards 2026, where if we can continue our fight and work really, really hard, if we can take back the House, we can, and the Senate, that would be great. Both would be great. But if we can take back the House, we at least have a check that he won't be able to ram through his agenda as he hopes. And that, that's taking, I think it's 8 or 9 seats. And so that's all that needs to flip. And we saw in Florida that there was a 15-point swing towards Democrats. And then think about all of the Republican plus 10 districts in this country. There's a lot of them. And so we could pick up 10 to 12 of those. We will be in a really less bad situation than we.
So how do we do that?
If there's a candidate near you, getting out and door knocking, phone banking, if you're like me, using your network, using your platform. Everyone has a platform. I think that's important to know. I think if you have an Instagram account, if you have a Facebook account, you have a platform. And if you can, some people aren't able to post their political beliefs, and that is totally heard. But if you can, share that candidate to your network and help them build new name awareness in your community. And so those are small actions that we can all take to help take back the House in 2026.
Yes, let's do it.
Yes, please. I think there's so much writing on that. So
please, everyone.
If everyone just posts, everyone that listens to this or everyone that follows us posts 3 times on their Instagram stories about a local candidate, that moves the needle more than people think. And so I think that's an important thing, that we can all be organizers and we all have platforms. And if we could all just organize our corners of the world, I think that we can make progress.
Yes, even on a run today, I saw some new signs for local candidates, and I need to look up some of these people, because I'm grateful to live in a space where the people are very outspoken about what's happening locally. They'll put up a sign immediately, and I'll be like, oh, who's that? Have to look into it.
It's important to research, especially with local candidates. Some of them are nonpartisan, and so it's really important to research who you're voting for and what they actually stand for, because sometimes they might say one thing, but then they're following Donald Trump on Instagram. So, it's important to know who you're voting for and what they stand for and what they'll stand against as well.
Are you going to run for something at some point?
I don't know. Right now, we have to get through this 2026.
Yeah.
We have to get through this 2026 House. I think we all have a purpose and a movement. And mine right now is helping elect good people into office up and down the ballot. And, that's using my platform, Katey for Change, to, I try to be informative of what's going on so people know and can hold their politicians accountable. This week, I believe, on the budget is supposed to be voted on, and there's probably going to be significant cuts to Medicaid. And so making sure that people are aware how their representatives are voting and the consequences of that. That means people are losing healthcare, and that is not great. I think a majority of America would support expansions to Medicaid. And so I think it's being able to make politicians' actions traceable so that they can be held accountable.
It's true. We can't let them get away with sneakiness. We have to stay alert.
Yeah, it's like those that voted against the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, but then we're taking credit for all of the money that their district received. It's crazy. So they'll be like, I secured this funding. They're like, I secured this funding, but then they voted against the bill that gave them that funding. So.
Oh, where did that happen? Or what?
That would have been during the Biden administration. It's called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, and it invested in our roads and bridges. And so there were several Republicans who voted against it, but then are, going to the openings of these projects in their district and taking credit for it when they voted against it.
Was that connected to the IRA?
They're two separate bills. The Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act are two separate bills, but a very similar premise, I'm sure. I think with the Inflation Reduction Act, what people struggle with is that it wasn't a short-term fix, it was a long-term fix, and so the effects of it won't be felt for 5+ years, far after President Biden is out of office. And so I think that is a struggle for some people to understand, especially as they're voting on the economy. A lot of the changes going on there are some things that a president can impact immediately, like tariffs and how that impacts the stock market, because that is an action and that, creates distrust and people are worried about their money. And so that's one thing. But some of the macroeconomic things that President Biden did won't be felt if we still have an economy that works until mid to late this year, because there are such sweeping trends for such a global economy that they're not immediate fixes. And I think that instant gratification and politics, particularly at the national level, don't really go hand in hand. And so sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so I think it's really, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was like more immediate. The Inflation Reduction Act is a little longer term of a project.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, that these changes aren't usually felt till after. Like, one president could make changes and then you can't really see the effects until the next president's in office.
Yeah. And that's the importance of the civil service. Like, the people that Trump is laying off, like, those are the people that make sure these projects transcend administrations. And so he is, there's so much to say about the federal workforce, but that's one point of the civil service, is that institutional knowledge, but the ability to help continue delivering for the American people regardless of who's in office. And so that is the importance of the civil service, is they're the ones helping carry out those projects.
Yes, we need those people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't fire them. We need those people.
I have no words for the Trump administration, or I do, but I probably shouldn't say them online. And so I think we're entering a very dangerous point for our democracy, and it's very scary. As someone who studied this in college and who has a degree in public policy, I am very concerned about the direction that we're headed. But 2026, we're taking back the House. So that's my hope, and that's my optimism, and the fact that people are fed up and angry, I think, is also a source of hope in these crazy times.
Yeah, I think anger is passion. It is fire to make those changes. Because if you don't have the anger, or you're just passive about it and you're just letting it happen, like, everything will just run amok. We have to have some sort of degree of anger about this, but channel it into the changes we want.
Right. And I think that, people tell me that protests don't work, protests don't matter. There is a time and place for a protest, and there's also time for, working behind the scenes. There's both, but I think in this moment, showing up in these Republican districts, the fact that hundreds of, people in the largest Republican city, or we are the largest city that elected a Republican mayor, Fort Worth, and the fact that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people showing up and protesting should have all of the Republicans in my city worried, because that is showing them that people aren't happy with their actions, people aren't happy with what is going on, and hopefully that creates, if not a change in action, at least a level of concern for the 2026 elections, because at the end of the day, what most elected officials are worried about is re-election. They want to maintain their access to power. And so if we can jeopardize that, That's how we create change. And so that's why I continue to show up to protests. My representative doesn't do much. He does he rolls over to Donald Trump whenever given the opportunity. And so we're sending a message to him that his seat is not safe. He might have won it in 2024, but 6 months later, it's not safe, and we're coming for it.
Good for you showing up.
I view myself as an activist on the ground first and doing Katey for Change second. I think that I started Katey for Change because in Tennessee, after the expulsions of Representative Jones and Pearson, all the cameras left. CNN was there, all of these news outlets were there, and they left to the next big story, which is important to cover. I think it's really important for them to cover. But the extremism of the Tennessee state legislature didn't go anywhere when the cameras left. In fact, they got more emboldened. And so it was on us people on the ground using our little platforms to highlight what is going on. And so that's why I started Katey for Change, was to share what is going on at the Tennessee state legislature. And now it's kind of evolved into, making politics accessible. Because at the end of the day, that's what my goal was in Tennessee, for the people that can't leave their 9 to 5, making sure they didn't miss what happened.
I'm glad you started with that, but then you're continuing with other things that are still equally important.
Yeah, I think it was hard to leave Tennessee. I think it's hard to leave anywhere, but just like every other adult, I have a career outside of Katey for Change. And so I have to prioritize, my work, my family, and everything, just like every other adult. I know I get people are like, you've never worked a job, don't talk about politics. Well, I do work a job. I'll set the record straight. I do have a job. I do work, and I do have responsibilities. And, I think it's recognizing that the content creators you see online are also people who have lives is also extremely important. I think it's very easy to give a witty one-liner gotcha comment to you and I when they see us on the screen, but at the end of the day, we're people. We have feelings, we have responsibilities, we have lives, and you wouldn't say that to my face, but they're saying it over the phone.
Yes, it's true. And I feel like I don't take anything personally these days, but I still sometimes see stuff and I'm like, that was just mean. Why would you say that? You're probably having a hard day. Block.
Yeah, you don't take things personally, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still sting, right?
It does sting because it's a human saying something mean to you. Why would anyone do that?
Exactly. You can block them, you can do that. But I think at the end of the day, if you wouldn't say it, I think it's so cliche to say, if you wouldn't say it to my face, then why are you saying it over the phone? And there are things that I will say to someone's face that I'm not scared to have, to say online. There is a time and place for things, but often I think at least for me, and I'll let you speak for yourself, but the things that I get are, you're dumb. And I'm like, okay, maybe. Where, what sources do you have that counter mine? I would really love to see them because I'm happy to correct myself if I make a mistake. And more often than not, they don't want to, and they just go on. They either don't respond or do that. I'm open to being wrong. And I think you have to be, as a political, I don't know what you want to call me, commentator, someone who commentates on the news, I have to be willing to be wrong. I have my research, I do as much research as possible, but you can scroll back in my account and see that I've issued a correction about something I've said. And I think that's important. And so I'm open to people saying that I am misinformed. Okay, cool, send me the source. And then they don't. And so it's people, rather than actually debating substance, they have to resort to ad hominem attacks and attack us as individuals rather than attacking the content.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's easier for me as a creator who talks about politics. I think that there are lines that blur where people do get attacked. Their identity is attacked, and that is unacceptable. I think by talking about the news, there is a degree of separation where the comments that I get are, you're dumb, you're misinformed, you're too young, you're uneducated. And sure, send me the sources. I can show you my degree, but...
You're very much none of those things, though. I mean, you are educated, you're smart, so it's kind of baseless.
But I can be wrong. I have been wrong. And so, like, if I am wrong, send me the source. Don't be afraid. Like, I hope I come across online as someone that tries to create a safe space for disagreement. And there's a line with that, like racism, sexism, all the isms aren't tolerated, but genuine misunderstanding, genuine confusion, genuine curiosity is welcome on my page. Mm-hmm. And I want people to challenge me politely, but I want people to challenge me because that's how we grow. If we're only talking to people that 100% agree with us, we won't move the needle. And so I try to create an environment where people can come regardless of views to be informed. And that does open me up to more baseless attacks, I guess, from people, but it also allows me to reach people that might be regretting their vote, but want a safe space to ask questions, or that aren't a voter, but want to be informed, but don't want just gotcha comments, you know? I try to really be a resource, and I do spend a lot of time researching. And so I can be wrong. And please, if people watching this see something that I'm saying is wrong, correct me. I want to learn. But yeah, I think it's a lot of baseless attacks online that happens to creators, particularly when you're talking about controversial issues. I put that in quotes because there are some issues that are controversial that just shouldn't be, but are unfortunately in 2025.
Yes, I love all you said about you're willing to maybe change your opinion if they have something to back it up. I think that's how everyone ought to be. Just you're open to learn more if someone happens to know something you don't know.
Yeah, I think growing up in Texas, the one thing I didn't get was exposure to different ideas. That came in college, I think, a lot more. I went to a rather echo chambery high school, and a lot of the people disagreed with me. Majority of people disagreed with me. And so I had to, when I went to college, I was able to, one, interact with those people who disagree with me and learn, but also be with people who disagree with me from the left and disagree with me from the right. And that was something that I only got in college. I didn't really have people disagreeing with me from the left in high school. And so I really grew in college because I could hear more sides of an issue. And I think majority of Americans fall somewhere in the middle. And so I claim to be a pragmatic progressive. I think we, again, have those fundamental ideas we agree on. A clean environment, freedom from gun violence. Let everyone, the government should work for all Americans. We all have those ideas, and those are considered progressive. Again, I don't know why. I think those are very bipartisan ideas that a majority of Americans would agree on. But the way we get there differs. Some people want overnight change. Some people want incremental change. And I think that if we can agree on the values that we hold, which I think a majority of Americans do, maybe I'm optimistic, but I really do believe that no American wants a kid to go to school and get shot. Like, I think that's a very agreeable thing. We might disagree on how to get there, but I think that if we can agree on that and approach conversations in that way, we can really move the needle.
Yes, I so agree. If we can get to the base, like the value of what we're talking about, and just really connect to that, then we can get more people on board of the change we're making, because it ultimately will serve them as well.
Right. I think there's a lot of gotchas and a lot of, trying to get that one-liner for attention on the news. But at the end of the day, that's people talking to the news. There are everyday Americans who are working their, 9 to 5, maybe multiple jobs, and can't tune in. And so they are unable to have their only time to talk politics is maybe with a friend, right? And approaching those conversations not from I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna make you slip up on your words, but from a genuine, interest and leading with empathy. I think that really is how we can move forward as a country. Maybe I'm optimistic, but that's at least what I believe.
I believe it too. Human. It's very human.
Yeah, and I do, like, as much as I talk online, I also talk in person. And so I think it's also important that sometimes we put down the screens and have that longer 30 to 45 minute conversation with a neighbor. That's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of disagreements, but recognizing that it's okay to walk away disagreeing and doing so respectfully and still maintaining that relationship. You know, I'm in a Republican city, I'm in a Republican state. Majority of people, according to the vote, don't agree with me. I think that there's a majority of people that agree on the values, but a majority of people supported Donald Trump where I'm at. And so how do we move the needle? It's not by saying your vote is wrecking the economy, your vote is doing this. It's here's how his actions are bad. What can we do about it? And how can we move forward together? Because that's in the past. The vote is in the past. We have to focus on what's in the future. And so it's trying to get people who are willing to listen, and, you know, there's this, again, not everything is a monolith. There are people within MAGA Republicans who regret their vote, who are willing to listen and consider different views. There are some that aren't, and that's not worth your time. But those that are willing to listen and have a genuine conversation and not just try to change your mind and vice versa, I think that's how we move forward.
Yay! Well, thanks, Katey, for change. Yeah, you're so well spoken and articulate. I appreciate your time. And your handles are Katey for Change on all the things, right?
Yes, but I spell Katey weird. It's Katey. So people sometimes do IE, but it's KATEYFOR, change, all platforms. And so, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy talking with you and, you know, talking with you on this podcast, but also outside. You are such an awesome human, and I'm so lucky to know you. And thank you for all that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like, comment, share with a friend. Really appreciate it. Love you dearly.